We're live on YouTube.
Great. All right, why don't we kick it off? And I'm sure some other people might trickle in. But good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining our Land Use and Housing Committee meeting. This is our last meeting before the summer recess, and we'll reconvene in the fall. But we have a jam-packed agenda today, a mix of land use applications, policy discussions, planning for the committee's work over the next several months. So a lot of good stuff, and I'm excited that you're all here. So we have a certified ULURP application. We're going to receive an update on a forthcoming rezoning. And then we also are going to hear from the Historic Districts Council, which I'm really excited about. We'll discuss a couple of rent stabilization initiatives that our board members have been working on. And then, like I said, I want to spend some time thinking strategically about what we're going to do over the summer while we're on recess and our fall pipeline. So why don't we get started right away? And the first thing on the agenda is 4417 Greenpoint Avenue. Do we have the applicant before us?
We do.
Great. And who was that? Sorry, I missed it.
Hi, Richard Lobel.
Richard, are you in the room?
Yeah, we'll stand over. Should we stand where you are?
Go ahead.
Yeah. I'll bring it on close. All right, thank you.
Great. And if you have something you'd like to share, let me know. If you want to email it to me, I can give you my email address and I can use my laptop to share my screen.
Okay, great. So good evening. Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel, joined by Fan Baton from my office, will be controlling the screen, as well as Jasper Wood from ZD Jasper. And we're here to discuss the 4417 Greenpoint Avenue rezoning, which is now in ULURP. I'm going to run through the land use rationale. And then I expect Nick Laveris, my project architect, to run in out of breath and talk about the architecture for the site. To the extent he doesn't, I will discuss a little bit more about some of the architectural aspects, and then we're going to be answering questions. So this is the 4417 Greenpoint Avenue rezoning. The next slide is a summary of what we're seeking at the site. The applicant seeks the following land use actions. We're looking at 2 lots and a portion of a 3rd lot within this community board. The existing zoning is R6A C14. And so that would be changing to an R7X C24 and an R7A C24. We'll show you on the map where that change would take place. In addition to that, there'd be a zoning text amendment. As with all these rezonings, we would be looking at an MIH, mandatory inclusionary housing text amendment to provide for required affordability at the site. The next slide discusses the numbers behind the proposed rezoning. So with an R7X, we'd be permitted to do an 11-story plus cellar building. And the floor area, roughly 142,000 square feet, or 5.5 FAR, with the breakdown of uses that are shown in front of you: 124,000 square feet of residential, 12,900 square feet of commercial, and 4,977 square feet of community facility. I understand that Nick and Jasper have both been in before the community board before to talk a little bit about potential for the community facility space at the site. Happy to engage in further conversations this evening, but that's just the rough breakdown of uses. The building height at 11 stories would be roughly 115 feet. There would be no parking provided, which we will also talk about. And the dwelling units would be broken down in accordance with this breakdown: roughly 20 studios, 32 one-bedrooms, 71 two-bedrooms, and 33 bedrooms, making more than 2/3 of the, or roughly 2/3 of the development, 2 and 3 bedroom units, which is, nice, important. It provides for larger spaces for families. We generally like to see something like this, or, and this would be considered to be a fairly robust unit mix. The affordability would be roughly 38 to 46 dwelling units, depending on the option chosen option 1 or option 2. To note with regards to the mandatory inclusionary housing text amendment, as with all of these projects, the mandatory inclusionary housing units would be in the same proportion as the units generally within the building. So of those 153 dwelling units, the 38 or to 46 dwelling units would be roughly 2/3 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms, which allows for much more generous unit sizes for the affordable units than would otherwise be required. And also those units, as per MIH, would appear throughout the building. That breakdown and those unit locations are approved by HPD in accordance with their guidelines and memorialized in a regulatory agreement recorded against the site. The next slide is the zoning map. So you can see obviously a dense zoning map. We'll be going to an area map in a couple of slides to give you a better idea. We would merely note at this point that the C44A along the boulevard here, along Queens Boulevard, would permit R7A in terms of zoning districts. The R7A that's proposed for the site would carry down that R7A 100 feet from Queens Boulevard where it currently exists. In addition to which, the R7X would allow for slightly higher density as you went down the block towards Greenpoint Avenue. So we're looking at continuing the context of the R7A from Queens Boulevard South, and then going up to an R7X to allow for slightly taller building height. The next slide is the tax map. From the tax map, you can see that there would be 2 sites that would be included in the rezoning in their entirety. The development parcel, which is located in red, you can see it highlighted, fronting on Greenpoint Avenue, and the commercial building, the supermarket, immediately to the west of that site. In addition to that, a portion of the site to the north of the property that fronts on Queens Boulevard would be included within the rezoning area. The next slide is the area map, which I think really tells the story well in terms of why this makes a meritorious rezoning. So few things to note with regards to the site. Number one, when we look at these sites, we look at the street system around the site and whether or not the streets around the site are really capable of handling potential increase in density to a medium density district here. Here we believe they are. Obviously, you've got Queens Boulevard, an extra wide street and major thoroughfare pursuant to zoning to the north of the site by about 100 feet. In addition to that, you've got, or sorry, 200 feet. In addition to that, you've got 47th Avenue, a wide street to the south of the block, and you have the intersection of several streets below the site. This generally allows for a little bit of a wider street context and the opportunity to handle the modest additional bulk that would be permitted at the site. We note that the R6A district that's currently at the site would allow for upwards of 9 stories. And so the 11-story building at the site pursuant to the R7X is totally appropriate. We are joined by Nick Laveris, our project architect.
Everybody.
And so just to wrap up my portion of the presentation and go to Nick's, in addition to the site condition in terms of street access, of course, we note the availability of mass transit and other transportation in the area. The 7 train being within 0.2 miles of the site, station within 0.2 miles of the site. Within about 0.4 miles of the site, we've got at least 4 bus routes, as well as bike stations in and around the site. So this really is an area where you've got great access in terms of transit. And finally, when we look at these sites and we look at rezonings, the opportunity to allow for residential density as well as affordability on a site that currently does not have any residential use, so there's no displacement. So it really allows you to bring upwards of 100 units onto the property without any residential displacement, something that's really sought by city planning and by individuals seeking to rezone properties. I would merely run through the next several photos, which show site conditions both on our site and the adjacent site. Of course, the former religious organization, which was housed in the at the site itself, and the building is generally well known, as well as the adjacent food store, the supermarket, which we discussed. With that, I would have Diane forward the application to Nick's materials, and Nick can go ahead and introduce the architectural aspects of the project.
Okay, thank you, Rich. So when we first saw this site, we saw that it was something that we often see when we are abroad sites that tend to be better for rezonings. And it's this condition where you have a large street that kind of runs at an angle from the regular grid. And what happens sometimes is that you end up with these little with these small, like, triangular shaped lots that end up being underdeveloped in a way which makes the block behind it feel much more open. So you'll note that that's the condition over here. We're right behind such a block. And the other thing that we noted was that there's a discontinuity on this strip on Greenpoint, where there's a very strong commercial presence that kind of goes past Queens Boulevard and then heads north, which have been historically interrupted by the Kingdom Hall over here. So there's a supermarket to the west. But there's just not the same type of like density that you would hope, from such commercial corridors where you maintain some sort of continuity. So purely on these urbanistic grounds, we thought that this was a suitable site. So we went back and forth several times with city planning. We have kind of it's a typical situation where the north of the site, where generally you'd be heading deeper into something that has less density, is actually heading towards Queens Boulevard, but it's separated from the district boundary by the fast food place over here. So the city planning didn't really know what to make of this. We went back and forth with them. We thought that that should actually recommend a higher height towards the north. But they disagreed, and they thought that it would be better to push it down towards the south of the site. So we went with that. In the end, they're both fairly appropriate because of the shape of the site and because of how the small triangular block works to kind of bring light to the site. Like there's not something built up blocking light. It has a very open and airy feel, and you can see from the rendering later on that there's kind of a big open feeling at that corner there, so the height is appropriate. So next slide, please. You can see here the supermarket to the southwest, which is that low-lying building, and then directly to the west we have a 6 or 7 story apartment building. Next slide, please. The proposed building crests up to the south over here. We've run through a bunch of different iterations with how to lay out rooftop amenities. We think that this is going to be a very like amenity rich thing for the neighborhood, both for the occupants and also with all the retail. Jasper will speak later to some other stuff that may end up being offered as a part of this project. But you can see that we're well under 200 units here. We ended up with a split zoning lot. So we have an R7X to the south, which has a slightly higher FAR, but really the main thing that distinguishes it from the other R7 family districts is its height. So you can go up to about 145. There's no need to do that over here. Corner sites generally yield much better situations for having denser, shorter buildings. So that's what we did over here. And we have something where we have these two grids. We have these two different symmetries that we have to resolve. So anytime you have contested symmetries like this, there's always an opportunity to do something to do like articulations that kind of respect those two things and how they clash. So we ended up with a proposal for this kind of sawtooth facade that has a couple benefits that include shading for windows facing the northeast. So it's something that we think will bring something lively to the street. Next slide, please. Just a graphic showing the green roof space. This is also something that you would be compelled to do by the code in several ways. There's a thing that we've been compelled to do since 2021 called a SWIP, which is a stormwater prevention something or other plan. And basically what you have to do is you have to show how you'll be managing stormwater throughout the life cycle of the building, and it starts when you start to build, and you have to submit to them, very, very detailed green room plans. So, most new construction of this scale has pretty extensive green roofs because of this. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So this was an earlier massing, before we really dialed it in. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, I guess we're missing the most recent rendering. Bayan, do you have the most recent rendering?
It was on.
It was on the cover. Okay, great. Okay. So yeah. So with that, I will conclude. And if you guys have any questions, happy to answer them.
Hey, let me kick things off. I know our committee has had conversations in the past about the community facility use in the building, being the site of the former Bliss Theater, so I'm sure you're going to get some questions around that. But let me start with a couple of zoning questions. I'm curious about the R7X portion. Why that split, and why not R7A throughout the site? Do you really need that extra height?
The extra height is very, very useful because it's more about the base height and how you could get a higher base height and how that could help you do certain things with articulation. And it's also slightly more FAR. We had gone in originally asking for an R8 just to see if city planning would accept that because of the proximity to Queens Boulevard, it would be appropriate, but they came back at us and said, stick with the R7X to the south, and that's what we end up going with.
And
Got
just to note, we end up with a blended FAR of the site of about 5.5, so it's more in line with an R7D than an R7X as far as the whole site. So it's kind of like it's the R7A in that area didn't really necessarily result in meaningful development in a lot of cases. And so this is something which kind of incentivizes some more residential and some more affordable.
Understood. And then the other question I had was around the MIH options. I think you said you're mapping both options 1 and 2, but obviously ultimately only one's going to govern the project. Which one are you leaning more towards? And if we had input, we would say, as we have in other projects, that we probably prefer option 1, option 2, to get that lower average household income into the site.
I don't know yet. I mean, I think we'd have a slight preference for option 2, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, 485X pretty much compels you to use option 1 for the bulk of it.
All right, let's go to the hands. I'm seeing Christine and then Michael.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question and a comment. So I'll start with the comment, which is, and I know I've raised this in earlier at earlier presentations. I think one of the characteristics of this neighborhood, which is important and sort of goes back to its history as a garden community, is some level of green along, planting along the street and modest setbacks of the apartment buildings. I see none of that here, and I regret that. I think there's an opportunity to do something that's a little more consistent with other multifamily development and the feeling of the neighborhood in general. This feels much more like Jackson Avenue in Long Island City, the way the facade is treated and the building coming right up to the property line on both streets. But so that's my comment. My question is about the unit mix, because I really appreciate and I think the community really appreciates the the larger apartments. But my understanding of the ULURP action is that it actually, there's no guarantee, there's nothing in the ULURP itself which would eventually tie you to this unit mix. So my question is, are you willing to codify that as some sort of community benefit or in some agreement so that this building actually ends up with 2/3 family units?
What have I said? So what we always tell everybody is that we really have to be responsive to the market. So what we're seeing right now is that there's a lot of demand for these larger units. So, this is what we've been doing. We've been providing a lot of 3 beds, a lot of two beds. So we don't see anything changing in the near future that would change that. But I would be very, very hesitant to, to put something, with some sort of agreements, like binding ourselves to that, because if things change, we want this thing to be maximally successful. We want there to be housing, we want there to be affordable housing. So, something like that might end up handicapping the project if it's.
Yeah, well, handicapping it financially, I understand that, but just so that everyone on the, that's listening to this from the community board understands, in 2 years, or if you sell the development, or in 2 years, if you decide that, wow, there's this great market for one, studios and 1 bedrooms, this building could have a much, much smaller proportion of family units.
I kind of would answer the question in a different way, because we went back and forth about this as an applicant team. I think it's a really healthy mix in terms of the unit sizes. And I think, we can talk internally about what we can say and represent to the community board about that. I know just, from working with Jasper and with ZD Jasper, they're very well established in the area. They have, multiple applications that are open right now. We want everything that comes to the community board to represent them well and to basically be consistent with what the community board wants. So it's a long way of saying that we're happy to work with the community board and try to basically, while Nick is concerned, because as we've talked about, you don't want to be in a position where you're having issues financing depending on your unit structure. We would, be happy to work with the community board and try to give you whatever assurances we can give you that we want to keep this unit count or something that has a good number of units of these sizes. So we get it, and I've loved this project because of that. And so I think we can talk a little bit more internally about what we're prepared to kind of say to the community board in that regard.
Dean, we can probably add that as one of our stipulations in our eventual recommendation.
Yeah, if the committee agrees, sure.
Yep. Michael.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about the lot north of the proposed development lot. As I understood it from the presentation, you would be rezoning a portion of the Wendy's lot to the north. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what exactly that means. Like, what's the current condition? What would the proposal do? Obviously, that's not the lot you're developing on. I understand that,
Right.
but I'm curious.
So it really wouldn't do that much. That C44A that's currently zoned on most of that lot allows for R7A development, which would give them a 5 FAR with affordability as of right for residential. And despite that, nothing's happened to the site. So city planning did want us to continue the line to that zoning district boundary so as not to have a chunky zoning district and allow for C44A, R6A, R7A. But having said that, and I think we could probably speak to this in terms of our environmental review, I don't think that it's projected that this change alone is going to result in any changes. And Pam, do we have Christina? So I know Christina Zapansky's on the phone. Christina is from GZA. They penciled out development in terms of the environmental review. Christina, was that a soft site?
No, it wasn't. For the reasons you just described, Richard, it wouldn't be considered a soft site.
Right. So it's just not creating enough, the difference between the small portion of the property or the half of the property that's R6A versus R7A, that additional 1 FAR on that 10,000 square foot portion is, just doesn't, as far as the city's concerned, doesn't rise to the level that would cause them to now redevelop, particularly in addition to which any of the additional redevelopment would need to be mandatory inclusionary housing. So it's another, factor that they would factor in. So we don't think anything's happening there, and it's really kind of unlikely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just kind of curious why I mean, you mentioned this yourself, but why the denser portion of the rezoning would be south of Queens Boulevard, and then this R7A, which is less dense, would be sort of in between
Right.
Greenpoint.
Yeah, I
and-
think it just has to do with the potential for, allowing for the R7A to continue up to the north of Queens Boulevard. So you're right. Typically, you'd see a more dense zoning district along a wide street like that. Here, though, there's that C44A, which exists already. And so city planning said, look, you have Greenpoint Avenue to the south of you. There's enough streets and enough of the street system to access the property. Go ahead and continue the R7A zoning from Queens Boulevard South, and that's what that C44A is. It's an R7A equivalent. And then as you get to that wider portion along Greenpoint Avenue, you can potentially rezone an R7X. So
Got it. So the R7A feature, it means now that the Wendy's lot has one residential FAR, whereas previously it had two.
it's more that half the Wendy's site right now could build to an FAR of 5, and half of the Wendy's site could build to an FAR of, call it 3.9 or 4. So what happens now is that instead of the split being between 5 and 4, it now becomes 5 and 5. So
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. That makes sense.
it's just not enough gravy for them to do anything.
Yeah. It's just it's no longer split, but it's not a particularly big increase. Understood.
Correct.
And then the other site on Greenpoint Avenue, the R7X zoning on the grocery store lot, is that something that DCP asked you all to do? I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about that aspect of this.
Yeah, they did ask us to do that. They basically just felt that given the fact that there was an intersection at the south of the property, it was appropriate to bring that zoning to the corner. We don't, it's not applicant controlled. We don't benefit from that site getting R7X zoning, but they just felt that the land use there made it consistent and it was appropriate to rezone that property.
Got it. Thanks. And then just sorry, one other kind of smaller question. I mean, from the zoning maps, it looked like there's a lot of R7A in Sunnyside, particularly north of Queens Boulevard. I was just curious if the R7X has sort of any precedent in this part of, like, obviously there are parts of Queens with much denser zoning, but just curious about the R7X again. I know you mentioned it with Permeet, but it still wasn't entirely clear to me what difference it made for you all, if it was the height in particular or what the
It was more the base height and how that could help us articulate a building in a more graceful way. And then some of the first R7Xs of the city were mapped along Queens Boulevard about 20 plus years ago now. So there is some history for R7X in this area. Maybe not like right exactly here, but up and down.
Yeah.
It's there.
And I think importantly, some of that R7A or a lot of it was rezoned in 2004 to 2006 before mandatory inclusionary housing. And a lot of times it didn't really result in the intended development. So we're seeing more now that some of this rezoning activity goes to R7X or higher, kind of compensates the R7A owners. It gets them a little bit of a higher FAR. They add the affordability, gets them a little bit of height, particularly in some areas along elevated roadways and and rail lines. So it's becoming more and more in fashion.
That's right. I mean, it was actually made so that you could have the higher height next to infrastructure.
Cool. Thank you.
Let's go to Brad.
Thanks. Yeah, I had two questions. One is just to Christine's point about sort of the massing of the building and the setbacks and how it relates to context. I don't have the presentation in front of me, so I can't flip back through it, but I don't recall seeing any drawings other than the one rendering just showing how this building relates to the surrounding fabric, like if there's any elevation studies or that sort of thing that you guys can share, just showing how you thought about the design in response to that context, showing height relationships or those sorts of things with the adjacent fabric. The second question is if you could show us that ground floor plan and just kind of walk us through, like, where's the retail, where's the entrance, what's going on that ground floor.
Sure. think it's like 3 slides on this. Okay, this is it. Okay, so we've matched all of the retail at this strong corner. And then we have the residential kind of mid-block, and we've placed the possible community facility towards the end over there, so it's closer to Queens Boulevard. The thought here is that the corner is definitely something that needs some sort of commercial anchoring. It works well synergistically with the supermarket that's next to it. And we also have a little pocket lobby that kind of cleaves the retail in two, just so we could access the course for the residential building. But there is a possibility for this to be a single contiguous commercial space that occupies the corner.
So is the community facility the open to below space?
Yeah.
So it's a sunken, yeah, how does that work with the open to below?
Sure. So what we had originally presented way back when was something where there was going to be double height space. So the ask was that there be some sort of performing arts type of character to this. So we needed the height both for the performances and also to hang the rigs, for the lighting, speakers, stuff like this. So we had gone back and forth. This is when we first came to you guys, we were asking for the R8A, and we got support from some members of the community board. And how we got to that R8A was that we quantified the construction cost of what it would be to have a much more significant facility, because there were some people like in the community board that were asking for like 1,000-seat, 100-seat type of capacity. So we took that seriously at the time, and we figured out it'd be X amount of transfer beams, there would be such and such amount of square footage that would be lost. So that's how we justified the higher district. So this is basically the reduced version of that works with the R7A, R7X blend, and this is how we're able to offer the double height space. We've also had other projects that have received some good support from other community boards, where part of the image of the building is actually being able to look into these spaces. So it's it's something where you could if there's a group that's so motivated, they could do something to engage the street in a way which gives it a more enduring and a kind of iconic presence potentially if they choose to use it. So.
Oh, and the plan is where you have the travel space and the community space.
This would be
So the entry to hall part of that?
yeah, right, like that. Yeah. And that's like sized in a way where it's enough generous enough where you can have your gallery,
I do have 3 questions. So, number one, I want if you could please talk a little more about the community green space. It looks nice, but I would like to understand a little more about the people with disabilities. I'm guessing they're going to have to go down, go up, go down, and then go back again. So if you could talk a little bit about that. I do want to piggyback on what Christine and Brad are saying about green. I think that one of the nice things about having Wendy's is not only having Wendy's, really, it's having that big green yard that makes it a little more friendly, even for the ones that are waiting for the bus. So I would love to see some green integration in some of the facades. The other one is, out of these apartments that you got on the units that you already have quantified, there is a new initiative from the council, from Speaker Menon, about not only affordability, but also ownership, like rent to own. Have you considered any of that, or would you be open to consider that in this building? And my last one was, because I guess I missed a previous meeting, is can you just share a little of, and this passed through, so I apologize for that, but I'm curious to know, why didn't you keep nothing from the previous facade? Because on my understandings, you were going to keep some of the previous facade and then develop the project.
Sure, okay, I'll just start with that.
Sorry,
So-
before you answer that question really quick for my committee, I actually need to run to the emergency room. My daughter's feeding tube came out. Tanya, do you mind running the rest of the meeting?
Yes.
You have the agenda and my notes in the email that I sent yesterday.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Good
Talk
luck.
soon. Take
Good
care.
luck, good luck, good luck.
Take care,
Thank
man.
you.
All right, so with regard to keeping the existing building, so. Sometimes. It makes sense to keep an existing building. In this case, it doesn't make sense from the constructability standpoint. So for us to maintain any of those outside walls, it's just an incredible. Burden on the entire construction process. So. What we had talked about with the community, was. Keeping some of the more. Notable elements, which Jasper has done, and he's been warehousing them. And we're still open.
Can you mention which are those, the more essential points that you kept?
Yeah, we have a whole list. I don't know all the items, but a lot of items from the previous theater, like railings, doors, some of the seats. So, the sort of list of items that, some team from the community board has. So those are sitting in a warehouse in Connecticut. We could incorporate those somehow into the building.
And we're super open to that.
And I'm sorry, just on that point, anything also from the facade itself? Is there some details there?
Yeah, so the demo of the facade hasn't started yet, but there were requests to keep some of the columns, some of the entry doors, which we can do that during demolition.
Yeah. And there's some cool tile work too, that makes sense. A chamber, we just have, so, yeah, so we're definitely open for that. With regard to the green space, we're gonna be planting street trees. One thing that we could do, Jasper, we haven't really talked about this yet, so let's set it down, but. We could push the building back a little bit, just because the zoning allows for like a little bit, and this is also because we are 7X. We could keep 70% of the building at 8 feet of the street line, which would allow us to kind of do some more like articulation in the way that maybe, we could place make, such that we could, make like, like a houses, so we could place the street trees in a way. Or aesthetic, so that, with regard to greenery up on top of the building, really, this is something that again is going to be much more hashed out when we get the actual design of the building. Everything that we're showing, like we've taken it to a certain level, but it's still very much illustrative because we don't know exactly what we're getting from the end. So until we have something that really dictates to us what the budget is, it's very difficult to commit that. Okay, so right now, this is just something which is very much akin to other stuff that we're doing for ZD Jasper and other clients in terms of the level of amenity, the level of green roof. The green roof, like I said before, is very much dictated by the code right now. So, there's a net benefit to everybody that we provided, but it's there, and we're gonna keep doing it because of those stimulates that we do it. With regard to handicap access, well, again, this is very much illustrative. The thought would be that there's always elevator access to every single level, so if you have a roof, and elevators, handicap access. With regard to the home ownership, I think that's a very broad issue. That don't have any kind of control over. We've been trying to do what you've been suggesting for the past year and a half now. And we get really jammed up when we go to HPD. HPD doesn't want to support affordable homeownership because they say that the level of affordability that is required just doesn't yield situations where these people can get mortgages. So, we will often go to them like for the past year and a half saying, hey, like we have this other building. It's because we want some extra height, it's because, we want, stuff for ourselves too, but they won't even, they won't entertain. They just think it's like a failing proposition from the beginning, so they will entertain affordable rentals within these buildings, so we have numerous projects right now, where we have condos, that have like you know, like a few like affordable rentals in there, but they won't accept affordable homeownership units. So, shit.
But since the council is looking into this, would you be open, I mean, through the process, if that happens, to look into home ownership as a possibility and that's, you know, for a few years, you know?
I think we're open to anything.
Yeah, I think we'd be open to it, but just to be honest, it would be like a small chance that the program that you're talking about, we're just not familiar with it. There's problems with it. I think just being honest would be a small chance, but we would be open.
And we are getting that, just as far as all of our rezonings, we're getting council members now who are more interested in us looking at that, so I think it's coming, and I think eventually people will figure out financially how to make it worth it, it's just not right now resulting in any of these. You know, it's like with all these MIH projects, there's so few of them that actually yield any of these rent to own or other projects, but like you said, Speaker Menon is interested in it now, and hopefully that'll get the council more interested and see if we can kind of crack this.
It's years out though, I mean, honestly, it's years out, because there's so much financial engineering that has to happen. before they take care of it.
Any other questions?
Got a quick question about the facade facing fast food. So
Yes.
that could be built up, right, according to.
Oh, in that area, yeah.
We could be doing those. So
Yeah,
the windows what we're looking at, or no?
You know, look, I mean, I think it would make sense to buy it. Would make sense to buy air for most people, or at least buy easements for most people, so that you could have some window space there, because it's really nice to have there.
You can't have legal light air now though, right? Like,
Now you can, right?
okay, so just convenience, you know, kitchens, bathrooms, living areas, but not that.
Stairs.
Okay.
But it would be built like this, right? With windows,
Well, this is an earlier version.
Okay.
Yeah, right now, we're not.
shut, okay, thanks.
Yeah, we would have articulation, those kind of stuff. Yeah.
I guess we'll follow up with you.
Yeah.
With a list of recommendations
Of course,
and that would be it. Thank you so much for coming.
of course, thanks. You know,
Yes.
So what's
Thank
the timeline for this from our side? Maybe, sorry, you guys might have been talking and the audio might have cut out online, so I'm sorry if I'm interrupting at a weird time, but I'm just curious what the follow-up action is for us, like how this, when this would go before the full board and so on, what our board ought to do.
When will you be ready? I mean, I guess right now we don't have quorum. So what we're gonna follow is with a list of recommendations. And then we'll have a conversation with Rafael to see when would they come to the board, but that would be September.
Right. Yeah, I was just curious with the ULURP calendar, because I think this is certified, right?
We still have it till a few days after September. So if they make it to the first board meeting in September, we're still good.
I see.
yeah, because if it's certified in June, you get an extra month.
Gotcha. So we should probably, though, have a recommendation as a committee for that September hearing, yeah?
Yes, and that is what we're gonna follow up with them, because for me, it's just a step up.
Okay.
So we'll email them, so we'll probably email all of us, do the list of recommendation and then share it with them, so in September that they come back, we'll follow through those.
Okay.
Sorry, when is the September meeting?
That might have happened.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
September, we'll just mention September 3rd, yeah, but me, yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I go before, later day.
Where is their certificate?
Where is it? I can search it up right now. So,
What's it, the 18th or 23rd?
I'll check right now to look.
We will certify on them.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we just are looking into when.
When their community board
Oh.
is due. Yeah.
It's a bit more on the
Yeah.
first Thursday. Right, but and it looks like it's in. Okay. So it is the time.
I think it's changing now.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
It does say community board review, that is started, board president, that is started, city planning, that is started, so.
Hello. Sorry about that. You guys have a question about whether 4417 Greenpoint Avenue was referred to the community board?
What, I'm sorry?
I think they're just asking about timing.
Yes, we want to know, if they come to do the presentation on, our next meeting, board meeting, general board meeting in, September, which we believe it's going to be September 10, if we would still have time before they pass to city council.
Yeah, the land use application portal will be open for a few days afterwards after your vote is due to accommodate kind of the weird summer schedule. So I think this recommendation will be due September 8th. The full board meeting I checked was September 10th. You can submit it that Friday right after the full board, and that's okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't hear the question in the beginning. It's kind of quiet in the room. Sorry about that.
Okay, so I guess, we do have the applicants of 5001 is for what? We can continue with them? Oh, you are.
Yeah, right. Right. Hi. You may remember me from such applications as good evening again, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel. We are in a different posture for this application. This is pre-certification, so this is still more in the consideration phase. We have not yet been certified in this manner. So this is for informational purposes presenting to the community board. As with the last presentation, I'm going to present on some land use aspects of the application. Nick can talk to the architectural aspects of the application. Jasper's here to discuss any ownership and operational questions, and we're happy to answer any further questions. Project description. So this application would be for a rezoning as well, although this is of a different type. The zoning map amendment here would be to change the zoning from an existing R6 C23 and R7X C23 to an R88 C24. And as we go through the maps, we'll talk a little bit about what that means in terms of the floor area and the fact that the existing zoning on this site, despite being here since 2006, has not resulted in any development in this lot. It's a vacant lot and has been for the last 10 years. In addition, of course, to the rezoning, we would be doing a text amendment with regards to required affordability pursuant to MIH. What would be permitted if we went through with the rezoning? The next slide is the proposed development. The numbers behind this development, the R7X here, or sorry, R8A, would permit 13 stories, floor area of roughly 117,000 square feet, with the breakdowns you see in front of you, roughly 105,000 square feet for residential and roughly 12,000 square feet for a mix of commercial and community facility uses. Building height 135 feet, no parking provided, and the dwelling units, as you see the breakdown in front of you, slightly different than the last one. 29 studio, 43 one bedroom, 42s and 26 threes, again resulting in a fairly robust unit mix, including roughly 50% of units at 2 and 3 bedrooms. Affordable units would be 28 to 41 dwelling units. The map that you see on the next slide is the current zoning map. What do we know in terms of this zoning map? The site right now bifurcated between R7X to the south along Queens Boulevard and R6 to the north. What would this currently permit? The R7X currently allows for 6 FAR, a floor area ratio of 6, and the R6 allows for residential with universal affordability of 3.9. For community facility uses, you could get that up to a 4.8, call it a 5. So fairly robust floor area ratios permitted at the site right now, but still has not resulted in any development over the last 20 years. Importantly, the rezoning to R8A does not provide any additional height for the R7X portion of the property. R7X and R8A, same height, 145 feet. And so this really allows for a wider, more fleshed out floor plate to allow for more units and more affordability at the site. The next slide is the zoning map, is the tax map, which shows the duration of the zoning district boundary here. 3 lots located on this block. Currently, again, you can see that R7X line to the east that carries through to this block. So the site's located along Queens Boulevard, R7X, and the site's above R6. Right now, as far as development is concerned, you can see the area map on the next slide. So there's our lot, which is the vacant lot to the western portion of the site. There's a small commercial building housing a coin-operated laundry to the north of us on the northeast corner. And then there's a 9-story residential building to the southeast, already built out to an R7X FAR. So no real development or redevelopment of that site would be contemplated by this rezoning. The primary beneficiary here is our site in terms of the opportunity to develop on a vacant site. We also note from this map, you can see why there's merit to this rezoning and why city planning has provided its support to date. Queens Boulevard, an extra wide street, as we've discussed before, 200 feet. Roosevelt Avenue, 66 feet wide. So not as wide, of course, but with the 7 train running along, we've got a subway stop roughly 2 blocks to the east of the site. So transportation abounds for this site. We've got 4 bus lines within 4-minute walk of the site. Several bike stations within 1 to 3 minutes of the site. So it's really, when we look at sites like this, in particular, to rezoning a site where you've got, again, a vacant site, no displacement to speak of, centrally located, good street system, central to transportation, this really kind of checks all the boxes and makes this a really meritorious rezoning. As with the last application, we include photos which show the site, inclusive of the 9-story building adjacent to our site, and the street conditions around the site, including the wide street on Queens Boulevard. You can also see a picture of the laundry in some of the shops. With that, I would defer to Nick, who can get into a conversation regarding the architecture around the site.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rich. So this site shares some of the same determinants as the last site with regard to, to the urban morphology, so the streets, the way that the shape of the streets kind of create something. In this case, you have proximity to the elevated railway. The south, very, very notable, that you have the graveyard, which affects, for its effect to the street, essentially a park. So it's an interesting vista over here. Like when you're looking down Queens Boulevard from both directions. When you're looking to the west, But the development, you know, that's happened in the past few years, kind of creates this thing where, it would seem to kind of naturally crest at our site. And then there's, the relief of the train kind of passing and making its way through the front of the site. So it's just, it's like an interesting little place to make some, to make like an urban loop to kind of anchor and they can find, this like nexus, you know, of Queens Boulevard and also Roosevelt Avenue, which I think it's a great point. So, you could see that, there's a mix of mid and higher density, residential that's, you know, been slowly building up over the past 100 years. Can you please go two slides forward? You could see that there was a big pop, basically post World War II, where lots of this stuff came up, and then there's some 1960s era stuff that looks like the Paloma to the north. And then in this pocket over here, this is that development that I was talking about, where it just kind of starts to press stuff, and we're seeing stuff further to the east that's really filling in. You know, obviously, the closer you get down to LSE, the more it fills in, and you have with this gas station, with the site, and with the site across the street, you have something that just seems to be a good future spot to have kind of this crossroads kind of intensification that happens along Queens Boulevard to the north and the south. Once you get right past this site, so you feel like it's a good spot to tie in to that commercial intensity that happens there. Can you just go 2 slides down? I guess 3 slides down. So you can see that we're asking for this RAA with the CP4 overlay. We're right next to the train. The move that we're trying to make with the building massing, if you go to the next slide, please, is to kind of step away from this train. So we're pushing everything to the south of the site to take best advantage of the super wide street to the south, and to take advantage of all the light and air coming off of the cemetery, which is very open. So we've masked it up in this way, which is about 10 feet lower than what's allowed. And there's the opportunity to mass it even lower, but we feel like this is appropriate based on what's next to us, based on the strategy of you know, trying to spend away from the elevated railway. Please go to the next 2 slides. You can see that we have about 138 units in this building. As Rich noted, it's a mix of, you know, almost 50% 2s and 3s, and then, you know, small units for the other half of the units. We are proposing retail facing Queens Boulevard, retail facing the west, and we're also proposing parking in the cellar. Jasper has asked us to consider doing some community facility. They have something I think was interested in a school. It's a daycare. And then you can see that the building kind of proceeds up, and everything was set up to kind of actually take advantage of that light and air. So the next 2 slides basically show full dot floor. And at this point, you know, we just want to hear your feedback, and thank you for your time.
Sorry, there is parking or there is no parking?
There is parking. Yep.
Okay, you said no parking. I do.
Oh, you said no parking?
No, you said parking and
But-
bicycle.
But the reasons. No, this maybe says no.
Oh,
Oh, there is, I saw a map of parking.
okay, well,
Right here.
we've had, well, there's
5
parking. Yeah, there's parking.
Spaces at one side, 3 at the other. Yes,
Yeah, I mean, we don't, so look,
8 to 9.
we don't have to do parking. We don't have to do parking. This is, I mean, we're within this inner transit zone. So we don't have to do it. But in the most recent scheme, we did pop it, show that we're gonna do parking. The cellar, we thought it would be appropriate, so we do have that. We'll continue, but yeah. What we see is that there is demand for it, and it always becomes an issue in these areas, you know, so we'd like to propose a little bit.
Before we, oh, yes, Brett, go ahead.
I had a few things. First, just a couple questions, like and I may have missed it, is this rental or condo? And then, like, what's the process here? I mean, there's not a lot, like, this is kind of it seems like this is kind of an early presentation, and then we're going to see more development to the design, in a subsequent one. Is that correct? Like, we're going to see exterior design and so on and so forth.
Yes. Yeah.
And what about the rental condo question? What's that? Rental, okay. And you still think that with the rental product that the parking is, I guess for lease, yeah, okay. Now the other thing is, and maybe this is what the first presenter was referring to as far as the operational questions. I'm gonna say that, like, you know, I don't have any problem with the massing that's being proposed, and you know, I'm quite pro housing, and I like to support these sorts of things. I will say that the stewardship of this site has been a real issue. And that, like, a lot of people are quite annoyed by it in the community. My son goes to the daycare next door. You know, the site is like kind of a mess. It looks like a scrapyard in there when the gate is for a while wasn't properly shut, and stuff would kind of blow out on the street and hit people. The portions of the construction fencing are falling down all the time. It's still happening after numerous complaints. The DOB's been out there multiple times. The council person has, I don't know, called the DOB. They're so tired of calling the DOB about it. Stephen Raga's office has done it. Raphael, who's sitting next to you guys, has done it. I've called 311 multiple times. It's a safety hazard. It's just like, I just find it completely ridiculous how that issue has not been taken seriously. You know, there's little kids walking to school on that sidewalk every day, and there's chunks of fencing like hanging out at a 45-degree angle. Sometimes there's chunks of like the plywood construction fencing laying on the sidewalk for days. And it just seems like, you know, the property owner doesn't care. And so it's hard for me to support this rezoning just because of that poor stewardship of the site that we've seen thus far. And, you know, I think it raises a lot of questions about when this project is actually under construction, when it's operational. It just shows to me a disregard for the safety and interests of the community.
Yeah, understood. We do apologize for that. We do get these messages also, and whenever we get them, we endeavor to fix it the same day in a couple of hours.
It's still not fixed. I mean, that fence is still being held up by nylon strapping. It's going to fall over again. I mean, it has not been properly fixed. It's being tied back to a small construction vehicle. It's not. It's no different than it was before when it's fallen over twice before.
Yeah, I understand. There's a gate right now that's there, and in the next couple of days, we're probably just going to replace the gate and just redo the entire fence in that area. We agreed. It doesn't make sense that it hasn't been fixed.
We can report back to the community board and you know, make sure that it's addressed. You know, as an applicant team, we want to see that the site is well kept as well. So, you know, apologies for that, but let's, like, on a going forward basis, see what we can do and report back to Raphael about what we've done.
Any other questions on Zoom? Michael?
Oh no, I just thumbs up that. I mean, I kind of I don't live as close to this area as Brad does, but I've seen pictures and like like he said, we tend to be a supportive board. I'm not at all offended by the project in principle, but it's hard when you see, you know, and hear stories about basically the site not being well kept and despite repeated complaints. So I'd really hope you guys take care of that.
Do we have any?
I was just gonna make a comment, or more just a question maybe. I feel like Queens Boulevard is, from a pedestrian standpoint, is so aggressive. right, through the intents, and we have 13 stories here that are in the ground. Is there a way to rethink how the building hits the ground on that side? So it's a little more gracious.
100%, and I think lots of it, like, it's, you can't really see this because you have these other side.
Right.
You know, right, that's, I think, bulk of it, but yeah, look, we're, next time we come back, we'll have a bunch of other guys, and we'll make sure, you know, to really show you, you know, like, develop everything we, guys, we'll do our absolute best, you know, to guys something that you like.
And what was the logic of entry at the corner? Just to keep it away from the subway or?
Keep away from the subway, also, we had that back area, we've done the bunch of different iterations of this thing, but the area facing the subway, we ended up deciding to be, best, as in one contiguous space, so it gets, just because there's so much traffic over there. So that kind of question.
Yeah, and my request goes actually to what you just heard before and what we just heard right now is like, I feel like the site has the opportunity to give us a little more of welcoming through more green in the three areas, like in the three, because I am not an architectural critic. I'm actually more of a building lover, but looking at the next door building is kind of like a little, yes, it doesn't make sense, especially when you have all this analysis of the 1960 housing that
Yeah.
it looks more welcoming and more friendly.
Yeah.
So I would encourage you to please give us a little more green in the three facade, so it could be more pleasant to walk around there.
Sure. And we have a great sidewalk over here too. It's like quite a wide sidewalk. So I think like we have everything. So that's something.
Oh, and if you can get back to us and let us know whether you're gonna have parking or not, based on the plan that you submitted here.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
match that up.
If you do have parking, the entrance would be from Roosevelt.
Yeah, it's good, because that's different.
Do we have any other questions? No, I think what we would like to know is when do you guys would be able to come back? We will follow up with a little write-up on our inquiries and then let us know when we do.
Okay. And that works. Okay. All right. Thanks for hearing us.
Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Feel like I should stay and give some more presentations.
Wants to see pictures of my kids.
It's a missed opportunity for a field trip in the middle of the, they're just going outside.
Right. All right, exactly.
Yeah.
Field trip. We missed that point. There's more north across the street. Thank you.
Next week, go with city planning.
Yeah. So I'll just run through the agenda items that Permeet sent earlier this morning, yeah? Unless other questions came up.
No, not for now.
Okay, great. So my items were updates on the city-owned sites. There are none. As of now, when there are updates, I will be sure to share them with the board. There was a question about 5002 Queens Boulevard. I assume this has to do with their ULURP clock. Okay, so the ULURP clock for 5002 is that the community board review ends on September 8th. Oh, actually, I'm realizing I was wrong when I said for 4417 Greenpoint Avenue, the community board review ends September 22nd. So you will have a full board and a land use committee in September for the Greenpoint Avenue project. For 5002 Queens Boulevard, the community board review ends on the 8th. And in that case, we're gonna keep open the land use portal to accept your recommendation after the full board meeting on the 10th, just to clarify.
Wait, you
Um,
said 5002, which that's the PC Richardson lot?
yes, the 5002 is the PC Richardson's, the 5001 is the one we just heard today.
Gotcha. So when would, and 5002, the PC Richardson lot, the clock is the 8th? you
Yeah.
said?
So it's certified on June 1st, so it's already in public review.
Uh-huh.
The applicant was supposed to come to land use committee meeting this month.
I see. That's the part that I was not understanding. Thank you.
In situations like this, DCP accommodates and is flexible so that community board can review and provide recommendations. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about the summer certifications? I think the 5001 project that just presented today, it's likely to certify in the summer while you guys are on break. So you will have seen the project before you go on break, and you'll get a refresher right before maybe a public hearing on this item once it's certified. But yeah, that's why the applicant came today. They were being proactive. And then so the last thing was, I see a point here about 3110, 3116 Hunters Point Avenue. It's a project that was recently noticed. Is there a particular question about this item on the agenda that I can answer? I don't have an estimate of when that project will certify. I think fall or end of the summer is likely. Okay. It's a project that's like a manufacturing to manufacturing rezoning. So the project description is up on Zap. You can take a look at the materials. Yeah. Anything else I can help with tonight?
I think that would be it, and if you can just send us some information while we're on the summer break, just so we could be looped and understanding what's going on, that would be great.
Yeah, I can
01.
I can be in contact with Raphael over the summer about anything that's coming your way, so that you guys are kept aware of anything that might be coming up in the fall.
Thank you, Fagala.
Yeah, Raphael's not on a break. You all might be, but yeah. Okay, is that okay? That's enough? All right, perfect. Anything else?
No, I think we're good.
Great. Have a good break.
You too.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. Never seen the.
So we're continuing with the historic districts of new business of the Council of HDC report. Eric?
Yeah, I can just say in introduction, we have someone from HTC on Zoom to do a presentation, but so this is kind of the culmination of the work that HTC did with Sunnyside Shines as the formal recipient, but also working with us on the Arts and Culture Committee, gathering data, and they came to the neighborhood and we did a walkthrough of some of the sites that they had done research on. And so this is kind of the culmination of their research and analysis and presenting to land use the sites that they're recommending as requests for evaluation by Grant Tax.
Who is on Zoom?
So we have Manur Fatima from HDC, and Manur is the community liaison. Manur, maybe you want to introduce yourself and
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I want to doubly apologize first by not being in person and being a little bit under a cold. So if you don't understand me, I am more than happy to repeat my words. I've been working with HTC since last year, and my job is basically to go to communities such as yourself, talk to you about what you care about, and see how we can work to preserve those buildings, the history, the communities, and It's been an absolute pleasure working for Sunnyside Shines because there's so much history and so much interesting history, and there's a lot of potential, and I, really wanted to share that information with you all. Should I go ahead and share my screen?
Yeah, you can do that.
I should
Okay.
add that the designation was for Sunnyside and Woodside, so as we'll see in the presentation, some of the sites that HDC identified are in Woodside.
Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So just for people who don't know us, this always happens. The Historic Districts Council is the only citywide organization devoted to advocating for New York's historical, architectural, and culturally significant buildings and neighborhoods. We work with community partners in over 500 neighborhoods, and we work to preserve places that matter to them. So, in case you might not have known, we have a program called Six to Celebrate, where we really work hands-on with the community to think about their preservation goals, give them the capacity support, and whether it's research or zoning or landmarking or marketing, publicity, we help advance local preservation campaigns. And in 2025, we were working with Sunnyside Shines BIT as a Six to Celebrate partner. And the thing about Six to Celebrate is that once you're a partner, you literally never get rid of us. So our initial goal for this project was to identify and advocate for Sunnyside's historic resources, and also provide a little bit of education about the merits of designation. What does it entail? What are the benefits? Because preservation, I think, has been getting a really bad rap in general urban spaces. So I'm here to talk about that. So far, in the Sunnyside and Woodside area, we have a successful online lecture about the history of affordable housing in Queens. And I will send a link, I will send this presentation, so there's a link to that video if you want to watch it. We also created a survey, you might have seen it, to gain community input on historic buildings in Sunnyside and Woodside that are worthy of preservation. We did submit a request for evaluation to the LPC for the Bliss Theater in April 2024. We were unfortunately rejected, and I mean, you just heard the ULURP proposal. We also supported Woodside on the Move with their advocacy efforts to get St. Paul's Episcopal Church landmarked. In July 2025, I think that was unfortunately also rejected. So this is a bad thing because when you look at the map that the Landmarks Preservation Commission has, there's only one historic district in Sunnyside and Woodside. That's the Sunnyside Gardens Historic District, and you don't have any individual landmarks. So especially under their equity framework, there's a lot of potential to talk about interesting histories that are worthy of designation, especially when the neighborhoods are experiencing so much change and development. So we did do a survey at the beginning of the year, and we received over 25 suggestions, mostly from Sunnyside, mostly concerning individual buildings. And the most popular were the Bliss Theater, which we tried to get designated, and Sunnyside Gardens, which is already designated. But we divided those responses into a couple different categories. So you've got entertainment, you've got religious institutions, housing, apartments, transportation, and commerce. And so when we look through the survey, we found a couple of really interesting sites that we think have a fair shot of designation that we've been working on and we've been researching on. So you've got the Celtic Park Apartments, 4810 43rd Street, Sunnyside. You've got the former Latham Letho Company, which is just outside the Sunnyside Gardens Historic District bounds on Barnett Avenue, and you've got the Belova Watchmaking Company on 62nd Street. A couple of people also gave other suggestions that we would be happy to look into, but in our field, we talk about integrity, and so some of the integrity of these buildings are a little compromised, so it'd be difficult, but not impossible to research them. You've got the Metropolitan Houses / the Cosmopolitan Houses, the Boulevard Gardens Complex, the Matthew Flats, and Little Manila near Roosevelt Island. Roosevelt Avenue. So I just wanted to share some of the history that we found through our research about the Celtic Parks Apartments. It's a really interesting story that it was built in the 1930s on an athletic ground. It was designed by Ernest Flagg, who is a really big deal in supportive housing architecture, as well as Springsteen and Goldhammer. So they have affordable housing all over the city. And it was originally intended for working class people, but they did include in their design two courts, avenues for landscape planning, which, you know, you can walk through it right now and it still looks really good. And you have storefronts on the corner of the buildings, which the tenants were supposed to occupy and generate income for their own selves. I have a couple of other pictures. This is the construction of the Celtic Park Apartments, the original symbol for the Celtic Park athletic ground on which it was built, and just a really nice municipal archive picture of what Sunnyside, what the Celtic Apartments looked like before all of this development came up. The next is the Latham Litho Company on Barnett Avenue. So this was a really interesting site because it is just outside the bounds of the historic district. It was made before Sunnyside Gardens. It was built in 1923 by McDonnell and Pearl for the Latham Lithograph Company, which was one of the most important lithograph companies. They did a lot of advertising for World War I consumerism, and they were once responsible for about 40% of all billboards in America, which is like, I can't even imagine that number. And at that time, you know, lithography was becoming this bustling industry, and all of these printmaking companies were coming into Queens because instead of making housing for their workers, they already had accessible housing nearby. And so there are articles talking about the benefits of moving to Queens in the 1920s. And then after Latham Lithograph kind of ended, it became part of a surgical instruments manufacturing company, and they used to make surgical instruments for World War II for active warfare. And there are also awards that the surgical instruments Sklar Manufacturing had. And then afterwards, there is more change in ownership, including the lithograph company that used to make records for the lithograph record covers for the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. So I haven't found exactly which ones, but that factory that owned this lot also did those lithography records. And lastly, this is a cool story about the Belova watchmaking company. It was founded in 1945 by Arte Belova, who's the son of Joseph Belova. I'm sure everybody's seen the Belova office building right across from LaGuardia. But this federal style building was made as a tuition-free school to rehabilitate disabled World War II veterans that were coming back. And it was designed by this very eminent firm called Perry Shaw and Hepburn. And Eric was very kind enough to send us a couple of pictures, and as you can see, it looks pretty good. The architect is pretty intact, and it also has this really interesting story about creating accessibility in a time where it hasn't been institutionalized on a federal level. So what are our next steps? We submit requests for evaluations to the Landmark Preservation Commission. We really wanted to focus on the housing projects that are available, that are around in Sunnyside and Woodside, just to, you know, solidify some historic precedent as the city continues to go towards new housing. So looking at old ideas of housing, limited equity co-ops as an inspiration for, you know, future housing projects. The LPC's job, or the Landmarks Preservation Commission's job, is to determine if the sites merit designation. Just to note that a may merit designation does not automatically mean you're designated. They have an internal survey. Those sites are added to that survey, and the next steps kind of happen much later. So just because we submit the RFE now doesn't mean that we're going to see anything develop anytime soon. You can also, if you have another interesting site, you can also let us know, or you can just submit your own RFE, and we have tips to help you write Okay, so what is a landmark? Why are we talking about this? New York City landmark is an individual building, district, interior, or scenic area more than 30 years old, which has been deemed an important part of the city's heritage. It enjoys legal protection because of its special aesthetic, historical, or cultural value. And when a site is landmarked, the Landmarks Preservation Commission have to approve any alteration in advance that affects the designated site. So there is extra protection, there's extra oversight on a landmark, especially when development comes around, which has been happening a lot. This is a really long process. We can get to it in Q&A, but just to go really quickly, once we submit the request for evaluation, LPC's own research department will take a look at it and then bring it to the commissioners. If the commissioners think that this information is interesting, they calendar the meeting. And calendaring is one step, and then actually designating the building is the next step. And it's really the designation hearing when the community comes out in support of designation or opposition of designation, and talk about the use or the value that that designation has on the identity of the whole community. Once the commissioners approve of the designation, the protections will go in an immediate effect. And then finally, the City Planning Commission and the City Council also kind of sign off on it, and you can express support, but it is the place you largely need to be to express support, or the place where you need to gather support is the designation hearing. That is like step 3. Landmark designation does not control use. Landmarks, you can't do anything about the interior of an exterior landmark. It doesn't prevent new construction. It doesn't increase the rent. It doesn't discourage affordable housing. ADUs are becoming a really big thing in historic districts. They don't require restoration. You can if you want to. You are not legally obligated. And designation does not mean you have to maintain a specific business forever and ever. So businesses in historic districts can also change. Just another option, there is the National Register, which is controlled by the National Park Service, with assistance from the State Historic Preservation Office. We lovingly call them SHPO. And so there is less oversight on buildings in the National Register, but the National Register helps provide historic tax credits, so you can get tax incentives for up to 20% on your residential properties. And you can do both as well. So it really depends on the community board of whether they would like to pursue a national or local designation, or neither, or both, and we can help out with all of them. Yeah, just a quick difference. LPC controls local designation. The state office controls SHPO. Local designations regulate maintenance. State designation does not regulate maintenance. Local designation doesn't give tax credits, but national designation does give tax credits. If a property is both, then local regulations often take precedence for any kind of exterior modifications. And so our ask is to help preserve Sunnyside and Woodside's historic character by supporting the creation of RFEs, maybe providing more sites, and when the time comes to generate public support, kind of putting a plan in place where we can, we can have a talk about it, or we can have more informational sessions about it to really clear the air on what landmarking entails, or what does it need to sort of demystify that whole process. You can always email me. My email is on the screen, and my phone number too, or you can email hdc@hdc.org. Thank you.
Thank you. Please remind me, how do you say your name? Manur.
Manur.
Thank you, Manur, for the presentation. So just to recap on what you said, when we share with you what are the sites that we are recommending, you would see which one is fitted and which one the owner would like to keep, which could be landmark or historic preservation, correct? And then you would help them kind of guide them through the process to either get those state tax credits. And I believe also if they become a museum, it goes up to 30%.
I'm not sure about the Historic House Museum program, but if even a community decides that there's an important public park or a business area that needs to be preserved, they can, like anybody can submit a request for preservation. They can write their own. And so local designation is one thing, and then the national designation is the one that gets you the tax credits. So it really depends on the board coming back to us and saying, okay, we like these 3 sites that you picked for such and such designation, but we also want to have maybe the metropolitan or the cosmopolitan housing for historic state credits. What is that process? And then we can help you with that process.
Okay, so what you're asking us really is to give you like a little feedback on the buildings that you presented and point out if we find any other.
Correct.
I don't know if there's any other questions.
And just to clarify, the nurse, we had talked about that in submitting the RFEs, that some expression of support from CB2 would be helpful in making that case to landmarks, correct?
Correct. And if the community board is able to connect us to the board, the tenants of these housing cooperatives, that would be great, because then we can do the same presentation to them and just make them aware that this is happening. We are not legally obligated to tell them, but in today's day and age, it is important to let people know that this is happening, because a lot of people complained that, these conversations were being had without the actual people who live in the buildings.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank you.
Quick question. One thing I'm curious about is the Sunnyside Arch, and I think when I took the survey, I referenced it. It's not a building, and it's actually not that old. As I understand, it's from the 80s, so I guess it is 30 years old, but it is kind of like an iconic thing that could use some love, I feel like. And I know at different points in its history, the lights have not worked and so on. But I was curious if that sort of feature that's not a building, not really even a property, it's just like a physical structure in the public realm, is sort of in scope, particularly with regard to things that could, give it financial resources for maintenance and so on. So yeah, I was curious about that, whether this is limited to like to properties like physical buildings, or if these other sorts of things could be in scope.
Yeah, that's a great question. For National Register, there are items and objects that can be designated in the National Register. So there's a tree in Bed-Stuy. It's like over many hundreds of years old. It's designated. The Wonder Wheel in Coney Island is designated as a landmark. I think for the National Register, you need to be the object itself needs to be over 50 years old to qualify. Is different eligibility criteria, but yeah, there are like the street lights and the clock lights on the Upper West Side. They're also like locally designated, so there's a possibility that an object can be designated and saved.
Cool. Yeah, I think we have to wait like 7 years or something for this one, because I think it's 1983, but maybe something for future the community board to keep in mind. Thank you.
And Eric, I think you were going to share a little more about the fall program with Pratt and those students having some workshops with Woodside and Sunnyside?
Sort of. So this is also thanks to Minur and Frampton Tolbert, the executive director at HTC, but they put us in contact with faculty in the historic preservation and urban placemaking programs at, and they have a studio that basically places the students in those programs in the communities to gather data, do research, and basically make the neighborhood their project. So I submitted a proposal to the faculty and academic programs at Pratt and they approved it. So they've chosen Sunnyside and Woodside as their site for the studio for the fall. So I'm in contact with the faculty right now. They'll be putting the syllabus together, but the idea would be that we will have opportunities to hear from the faculty and from the students on what they're researching. And so that will build upon what was gathered through the HDC process, but there might be more opportunities to identify spaces and places that are worthy of preservation and worthy of kind of connecting as we try to map cultural assets throughout the district.
Do we have questions? No. Thank you, Minora and Eric, for the presentation, and we'll follow up with you on this request.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
Feel better.
Yes, better.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a good break, you guys.
So we now have the rent stabilization letter. I guess yesterday was the last time that we could submit comments. I am wondering if there is a possibility that they could still take as an exception or letter, or are we done? Or if there is a way.
You're asking if we can submit this letter to agencies? Yeah, we should be able to.
Right, just like a support letter to the programs and what it says. I mean, Danielle is not here. I don't know if you have any comments, Michael or Marie, about it.
Are we talking about the same? So I think Danielle was working on something that I was not a part of, and then separately, Maury and I worked on a letter about the Peak Capital illegal rent destabilization matter. I'm not sure which of these we're talking about right now.
I think we were talking first about your letter.
Okay. Well, I don't know if you all have it in front of you. Do you?
Yeah, I printed copies.
Oh, thank you so much, Raphael. Great. Okay, so there's details in there, but the gist of it is that there's this ongoing court case involving the state attorney general and a property owner who owns a number of properties in Queens and Brooklyn that the attorney general alleges were illegally removed from rent stabilization. Basically, I mean, you can read some more of the details, and I don't want to misspeak, but the gist of what's being alleged is that the property owner acquired the properties and sort of under incorrect pretenses declared them substandard and then removed them from rent destabilization. And so mostly the letter is just in kind of saying thanking the attorney general for pursuing this and affirming the need to protect the law, uphold the law on this. And then there's some comments on policy matters too, like how trying to be more proactive about finding these things, like having an open data set around, applications to use these sorts of the programs that do exist to remove apartments from rent stabilization under certain circumstances, like when they have substandard systems and so on. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to kind of read the letter, particularly if you have it in front of you, but that's sort of the gist of it. I mean, it's interesting, like the majority of the properties that are involved are in our community district. There are also a number of them in Astoria and in Greenpoint, but there are very many in Sunnyside and also some in LAC. So I just thought it would be good to raise attention to this, to our council member and other electeds, to try to think about proactively what we can do to prevent this kind of thing and monitor this kind of thing. And also, I think there's reason to think also that the existing rules are not very clear and so maybe should be clarified. there is a policy that you can, under certain circumstances, remove an apartment from rent stabilization if its systems are substandard, but like that's not ever defined. And so that just like kind of creates opportunities for confusion and abuse and so on. And so like, you know, we should make it clear what the rules are and then enforce them. So that's the gist of it.
Anything you want to add, Mary?
I think that pretty much covers it. I think the suggestions that
really
I
hear you.
made. Can you hear me?
You're a little quiet.
Yeah, could you speak up a little, please?
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
A lot better.
Okay, good. The microphone was too far away. Sorry. The message I sent and with the adjustments or suggestions we're mainly kind of trying to put more of the onus on landlords and our agencies like GHCR to communicate with each other, to share information. Like if there are violations, the buildings department should be sharing that with DHCR. If there are upgrades are made and things like that, or they're trying to claim for upgrades, things should be like triggering action rather than right now, the way everything is set up, really it's up to the tenant to figure out whether they're in compliance or not and then file a claim. And usually, and Lauren can tell you better about this because she works with a lot of housing rights organizations and volunteer work. Sorry to put you on the spot, Lauren, but you're the authority here and have all the experience. But it's I know from personal experience and from neighbors, it's been really tough for folks because they don't know. They don't know that their apartment was supposed to be rent stabilized. And what do you do when you try to get a new apartment and you ask if it's rent stabilized? If they don't want to do it, they're just not going to rent to you. So what do you force them before to tell you? Then you wind up signing the lease and then you have to fight it. But most people don't even know that there are rent history reports and how can you is it even possible to retroactively have an apartment that was previously destabilized 3 tenants ago, illegally even? Is there a method or a process for getting it back on? And are there any ways if you lost your apartment because you couldn't afford it because it was market rate and it was illegal to make it market rate, is there any retribution? Is there any way for you to be made whole? And so I think there are a lot of things that are put on tenants who are already burdened enough. And there are some, good intention, well-intentioned landlords, and maybe they make a mistake here and there. But in a lot of these, we see gross, flagrant abuse. And as one tenants' right organization director once told me, some of these landlords are not in the business of creating homes for people. They are speculators and they are preying on people and the transient nature of a lot of tenants in New York so that it gets lost in the shuffle and they don't know that they have these rights or that it was stabilized. And there's such a demand, there's such low vacancy rate that if somebody rents an apartment, there's 500 other people that'll take that. Well, maybe not 500, but there's a lot of other people that'll take it so they can just pass you over. So, what can we do to really advocate for taking the burden away from the renter and putting it more on city agencies to do their job, to enforce things, even like as simple, and I might have said this before in another meeting a few months ago, but even as simple as if they raise the rent because they say they did upgrades, they don't even have to show receipts, literal receipts to anyone to get that rent increase. It's on the burden. The only time they have to show receipts is if a tenant says, hey, they said they did $80,000 worth of upgrades. And I saw, images on Street Easy from 5 years ago, and it doesn't look like they made any changes. Then they make a claim and they report it. That's the only way they're forced to show receipts. That's bad. That's wrong. And I think this is exactly what we as a community board and we as land use should be doing. So I think it's a great opportunity for us. And maybe if other boards see us advocating for this, they'll do similar. That's all. I thought I didn't have anything to say, and apparently I did.
So
Right.
what we're also asking is is to have a public site, or not even that, maybe the buildings would have information on their affordable units up front. And then we get to verify, it's just to have a site that would take a little time for them to create. And then that way we could check if the units some of the units are rent stabilized.
No, I don't think that's possible. That's with millions of units in the city. That's not something we could do as a community board with no budget. This is something that the city already has the resources to be able to do in terms of they have agencies that are responsible for these things. They have listings of rent stabilized apartments. This is about holding to account the city and the agencies and the landlords to do their job and to hold the landlords to account, but also making the agencies do their job, which is it's their responsibility, and it should be their responsibility, and they need to be funded by our city and state governments to make sure they have the resources. Like DHCR probably has not enough resources. If you file a claim in DHCR, Department of Housing, your claim might not be looked at for 3 years. It may take 4 or 5 years to even come to a resolution, and oftentimes it's not in the it's in the landlord's favor because they tend to be assessed that the big criticism of some of these agencies is that they disproportionately favor landlords. And we're not talking about small independent landlords that may have like a 2-family house or something like that. We're talking about these institutionalized, industrialized housing people, like my landlord who has like 100 buildings or 80 buildings. And, there's Sunnyside landlords and Woodside landlords that have 10, 20, 50 buildings, $100 million worth of buildings, $1 billion, $10 billion. And they're like institutionalized factory. They're just cells on a spreadsheet. They're not creating people's homes. And, they just, as this person told me, who, like I was saying before, from this organization for housing rights, literally said it doesn't pay for them to do what they're supposed to do, because basically they get slapped on the wrist if they make a mistake. So if they can raise the rent $100, $300, $500, $1,000 a month for 100 units, 500, 10,000 units, depending upon how many they have, if they get sued and they have to pay 100,000 or 200,000 to one tenant, but the majority of all tenants are not doing this because they don't know their rights and the city's not enforcing it. We're talking millions and millions and millions of dollars in money that they're getting that they shouldn't be getting, but they get because there's no enforcement. And to that, I will maybe ask Lauren if she wants to add anything, because I probably missed stuff.
No, you're preaching to the choir, Maury. I agree with everything that you've said. And even in terms of like from my own experience, with respect, because it's like at one point my building was owned by a predatory equity landlord whose model was about getting money and at all costs, basically, I would say. So I agree with you. I mean, there's a lot of changes, but I also agree that the burden shouldn't be on the tenants. And it's interesting. There's a time limit too, right, to be able to get the rental history though. But it's interesting. I have an organization that's helping us right now in my building, where I was able to see the rent history through the apartment registration information. So it's interesting to see like what the whole history is like prior to my even getting my apartment. But I agree. I mean, the burden should be on the agencies.
Thank you, Lauren. Michael?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I think Maury and Lauren point out that there's a whole can of issues here. The letter is relatively focused on like a specific issue, which is this specific provision that this particular landlord is alleged to have abused in order to illegally deregulate units. in a couple of places talk about prevention and taking the burden off tenants, like by funding the tenant protection unit appropriately, and like having proactive tracking of uses of these kinds of provisions, like putting it in a transparent place where people can monitor it. But it's certainly not the end of the story. I mostly raised my hand because I actually need to go pretty soon. But I was just thinking, as far as next steps, I mean, I would like to think, especially since we don't meet again until September, that maybe we could like send this off this like relatively soon, because otherwise I don't know when we would do it except in 3 months. So I wonder if that's possible. And obviously it's just the beginning, not the end of this conversation, but just to like, you know, get this particular issue in front of people more.
We can send it. I guess Marie just said that he had a few comments. So is it ready after Marie's comments to be sent out?
Oh, the comments I had were I sent around already. I emailed them.
Okay, okay.
So it's just a
ready.
matter of somebody wants to help integrate them into the whole document. I don't have the bandwidth to do that right now, but I was able to do the comments. Somebody who's a good editor, maybe. But just to follow up on what Michael said, Michael, do you envision this as, you know, focusing on mainly that specific issue, but we can address other things, or should we expand the scope of it and say this is an example, but there's a lot of other stuff that needs to happen, like some of the things I pointed out and Lauren pointed out, or do you want to keep those as two separate articles?
Yeah, I don't think this is the only letter we're ever going to write on this issue, but I think it's sparked by this specific incident in our community. And so my thinking was to focus on that. I mean, there are specific policy suggestions in it. So yeah, I mean, I'm not, I mean, I appreciate the comments that you I'm happy to, you know, make some changes and maybe run it by you, but I wasn't clear to me like what specifically to add given the I mean, a lot of it's just like the burden. I guess it could be more explicit. I think it's implicit that it should say the burden is not on, should not be on tenants, and just to like say that is really the
yeah, I think I agree. I think we need to say that the burden needs to be, and then that we need to that our agencies need to, you know, share data, and they need to enforce the regulations, and that maybe the city and state governments need to fund better these agencies, so there's more of a system. And of course, you already had said about using open data, and I think that's a good point.
Yeah, there's a sentence about funding in it. But I think basically, if I'm understanding that it's a if I were to interpret Maury's comments as a motion, it would be like approve conditional on adding like, you know, I'm gonna say 2 sentences, but like adding some language about like explicitly specifying to take the burden off of tenants and shift it like, you know, onto agencies and onto landlords to demonstrate compliance. Like that's the suggestion to add. And I think it goes in the second to last paragraph about prevention. I think basically it would be like 2 sentences at the end of that paragraph is where I'll put it. Cool. Maury thumbs up while muted. So I can
yes.
Awesome. I can take care of that sometime in the next, you know, by the end of the week, hopefully. And I'll send it to you first and then send it to like the office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Cool.
Okay, so the next point we have is Danielle's letter. As per Raphael's suggestion, even though the comments were supposed to be received only by last night, we can still send a letter of support, and that would be Danielle's letter, correct?
We can do that.
Okay, thank you. Then we have the New York City Community Planning Fellowship, and it's an application. There is a link in the email that Praneet sent. So it looks like it's also open to community boards throughout the 5 boroughs are eligible to participate. District manager may submit a project proposal that is both valuable to their community and substantive learning experience for fellows over a 2-semester frame. And that's it. So I guess we can talk about it through email on what would be those projects, and we can send it to see if, and the participants are Pratt, Fordham University, Hunter College, New York University, Columbia, Baruch College. So maybe we think about it, and I'm not sure when is the deadline, but I'll check and we can submit the project for them to help us and review. And hopefully we can do maybe with one LIC. I'm not sure if that would be like a fitted proposal, but we can talk about it. The next one is the DOB brownfield funding that is open. The applications are due on July 31st.
July 30. July 31st. Friday.
Okay, but what is that about? Okay, and this is like a 26-27 brownfield opportunity area program. There is information in Pramit's initial email. So let's also be talking about that via email. And I guess it was released on June 21st. We have questions open till, no, we can submit questions till June 19th. They will respond by July 10th, and applications are due on the 31st. So let's talk about that. And its applications are about like 2 million in available statewide to study and develop strategies for community redevelopment and brownfield affected areas. Applications are due through the consolidation funding application, and deadline is the 31st. So I guess because of timing, let's all look at those two links. Let's speak via email, and let's think about what we're submitting for because of timing. I'm gonna go really quick through the old business. I'm not sure if Michael left. Did he? Yes. Okay, so really quick, I'm gonna go to Lauren. Lauren, you were gonna send a resolution and information on the public bathroom access to the land use committee?
Right. That's still on, I'm still on track to do that. I did find some things. I'm just trying to make sense of like the history, the procedural history of what was voted on and what wasn't. So I just need to verify, and then I'll be sending that.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Yes, and Rafael will be sharing a little more of the information again, just to refresh everyone's mind about what we're talking about today. Rafael will also schedule a POPs focus discussion for future meeting with the experts.
That's right. Yeah, I'm gonna reach out to them soon, and I'll keep you and Permit in the loop.
Okay, thank you. We have two items for Nick. He's not here. The next one is Marie and Lauren collaborate on letter about illegal destabilization of rent. So maybe that is something follow up on the
I think that's this one, really. I think this one covers that, the one that we just talked about, right, Lauren? Because Michael decided he would help us with that one. We've done it, or we could do a separate one for the more general. We could work on that for next term.
Okay.
Okay. And then from me, and last for all business, we have a few items that Pramit was going to report. So I'll just cover the ones that are more essential. So we have spoken to the consultants and the possible collaboration for one LIC. I believe at this point we have spoke to at least 8 of them. We have received proposals, but not from all of them. So we have reached out to them to ask them. Initially, we missed to ask for proposals from everyone. So they have been sending those out. and hopefully we receive them within the next 2 weeks. So then I'm guessing we're gonna have to convene sometime during the summer or via email or share that somehow, so we can all select who will be helping us as a consultant for One LIC. That is number one. And there's a few follow-ups, and I think I'll leave it like that for now. The only question I did have for you is, would it be possible, how do we share more ideas and information that we have? That is not necessarily, and maybe for you too, Maurice, not necessarily Google Drive. Is there a way that we can get budget for like a mural board, so we can have different topics and we can just put in the letters or anything that we need, we can talk about it, people could make more comments easier? Is there a way to do that?
We can explore ways to do that, and I'll have discussions with Anatol to see if we can identify an approach to that.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Marie, what I would like is something that we could have, like information shared that is a little more organized, and instead of just scrolling down the whole Google Drive going up, and just having more pointed information about the things that we want to focus. So is there anything that you could suggest?
I think the only thing with the most common tools are either, well, I think the city and the office already have like Microsoft OneDrive, right, Raphael?
Yeah, you have access to that.
So I think it would have to be either something like that, or if we do have a Google Drive already, or if we wanted to maybe use something like
Can we use
Airtable or something like that. But that's more like, you know, it's kind of it's more data management and database stuff. But Miro is good, but it's really for more like presentations and whiteboarding digitally. So I think the challenge is, you know, what any of these tools, at the end of the day, you need somebody to organize all the information. And that's really what it comes down to. Like, you know, you need like a historian or like a tech person. It doesn't have to be a tech person, but somebody who knows about how to name files, not for what we're thinking about them as today, but how you would search for them later. It's like a library scientist, right? You know, like they think about you know, not only nomenclature, but you know, hierarchies and how to store and file so you can find them later.
So that's it. If anyone has any other comments.
Taxonomy, that's the word I was thinking.
Okay, so thank you so much for coming tonight. And we'll see you in September. We'll be in touch via email for all the pending things that we need to discuss, especially these URLabs. And have a great summer, everyone. Thank you.